Alright, so with the GTX 1660 Ti, Nvidia did release a quite strange graphics card. The naming scheme alone is very odd. They probably couldn't have gone for a more confusing name, right? But oh well, we in the tech community don't really have a problem with that. But I do imagine beginners having a bit of a hard time. However, criticizing model naming schemes doesn't get us anywhere. So today I'm taking a look at the GIGABYTE GTX 1660 Ti OC6G. This is one of the cheaper models with that GPU, unless you decide to go for one of those super short ones, because if I'm not mistaken, those cost slightly less depending on which model you choose. This card by GIGABYTE at the time of this video comes in at roughly $295 US, sometimes even less. And this is the moment where I start questioning myself, and you do too most likely. Wait a second, doesn't the RTX 2060 cost almost just as much as this one? Well, no, not quite. There's still a noticeable difference in price, but it's not really that big actually. So what's up here? Does the 1660 Ti even make sense? And how does it perform compared to the slightly more expensive RTX 2060? Are we possibly speaking of a waste of money here, or is this a graphics card worth recommending? So what exactly is a GTX 1660 Ti? Why does it exist, and why are we suddenly talking of GTX again and not RTX? Well, those features, ray tracing and DLSS for instance, aren't all too popular, and some go as far as saying those are worthless, especially in the mid-range of GPUs. This is why Nvidia presumably wants to offer us a more affordable graphics card that is based on the Turing architecture but doesn't come with any of those RTX features, meaning just like with the RTX 2060, the 1660 Ti is equipped with 6GB of the new GDDR6 VRAM, features the same rather slow bus width of 192-bit, and yeah, the TDP is slightly lower, and so is the amount of shader units. With the exceptions being the base and boost clocks of the GPU, those are higher than those we see on the 2060. In return, however, that GDDR6 memory is clocked lower by quite a fair bit, possibly to artificially slow the card down. More on that in my upcoming overclocking video. When it comes to GIGABYTE's design choice, I'm not going to say all that much here. Judging from the front, or rather top, it does look pretty decent. But it's very obvious it's a very short PCB, and GIGABYTE as well as certain other manufacturers have made their cards slightly longer to allow for better cooling and thus even lower noise levels. We are talking of the so-called WindForce 2X cooler. 2X because we have two 90mm fans here and not those usual three smaller ones we see on the WindForce 3X solution. Both fans spin in different directions to avoid turbulent airflow, at least that's what GIGABYTE says. Very exemplary of that board partner is to implement semi-passive cooling here too, meaning at idle under light GPU loads, the fans will not be spinning. Only once the card reaches a specific temperature, the fans kick in. And one thing I can tell you right away, even at full load, this is an extremely quiet graphics card. The whole shroud, of course, is out of plastic. No problem, many manufacturers do that. What did, however, shock me is the backplate. Yes, GIGABYTE did think about us tech enthusiasts and how much we like those backplates, and so they slapped one on here. The thing is, it's not out of aluminum as we'd normally expect, but instead it's plastic. Honestly, I haven't seen something so brutally absurd for a very long time now. Sure, a card with a rated TDP of 120 watts might not really run hot, but plastic insulates, meaning the heat dissipation is very bad as opposed to aluminum. So this is the moment where I would have preferred getting this card without any backplate than having this plastic thing on here, because aesthetics aren't the #1 priority at all times, and on top of that, it doesn't even look good. At first glance, you already see that's cheap plastic. When it comes to video outputs though, it's great, nothing to complain about. But enough of me rambling and ranting. What kind of performance do we get with this 1660 Ti? well, I have to admit, the performance is looking nice so far. When taking into consideration this card comes in at about $295 for a new card, that's not bad in my opinion. But sure, if you want and can go for a used GPU, you might find something more powerful for that amount of money. Because even though we are looking at frame rates similar to those the GTX 1070 delivers, the 1660 Ti most of the time loses out to that card. And I'm not entirely sure, but I assume it has something to do with a rather poor bus width of 192-bit. On the GTX 1070 we are after all looking at 256-bit. So in theory that could be the reason for what we see here. But then again, to be fair, it must be said the 1070 back when it launched was put in a completely different price bracket than this 1660 Ti, and that's why I'll stop comparing now. In general, I'd say the 1660 Ti definitely is slightly slower than its bigger brother, the RTX 2060. Nevertheless, we can smoothly play games with the 1660 Ti, that being at 1080p as well as at 1440p. And do keep in mind we are talking of maxed out graphics settings, but not all game titles do run smoothly with 60 FPS on average at 1440p. Sometimes you simply have to turn down some graphics settings. However, I'd say this is a 1080p GPU anyway. The temperatures are of no concern, but they are quite a bit higher than what you'd normally expect from a card like this. That's thanks to Gigabyte's great idea to put on a plastic backplate. Yay! At idle, the temperature has to be higher. Makes sense since the fans aren't spinning until a certain point is reached. But we are at almost 50 degrees. But well, I don't want to blow things out of proportion here. This will not cause any problems. But I'm surely allowed to criticize, right? The power consumption, on the other hand, is looking really good. With such a graphics card, you could save a couple bucks on the power supply by not going for as much watts. And yeah, at the end of the day, I can say this GPU is nothing special actually. Ray tracing and DLSS are non-existent here, so for those wanting slightly more performance and potentially want to make use of these new features, you probably should consider paying the premium for the RTX 2060. Without a doubt, traditionally speaking, this for the most part is a good graphics card. It's just a bummer that first of all Nvidia went for such a slow bus width on the 2060 and 1660 Ti, and secondly that Gigabyte, instead of going with a metal backplate or without any, thought it was a good idea to use plastic. That's shocking actually, and I don't want to see that ever again. And I am aware not all of you will agree with me on that matter. I'm giving this Gigabyte graphics card my silver award. And as always, thanks a lot for watching.